Well, science, particularly in Pakistan, has not been a top choice of careers just because it's not a straightforward pathway. So it's important to be engaged as to what is happening in your particular field at a global level. My grandfather was a scientist.
Hello and welcome to our 7th episode of our LEADhers series. We are here with Dr Zahra Hasan, who is a scientist. She's a consultant pathologist, the director of Faculty of Health Sciences PhD program, and is also the Endowed Professor at Aga Khan University Hospital. Zahra's main focus is on infection and immunity research, pathogen genomics and clinical diagnostics at the Aga Khan. We are very fortunate to have her, given with COVID, she has a crazy schedule and of course has become one of the superheroes literally of Pakistan.
First of all, thank you Farhat for that kind introduction. It's an honor for me to be here, to be part of your web series, and I'm very happy to speak to you about my own experience working in science. Why are there not so many people in science at all, not just women? Well, science, particularly in Pakistan, has not been a top choice of careers just because it's not a straightforward pathway. The study of pure sciences, first doing undergraduate, masters and then PhD degrees takes a long time, and there hasn't yet been so much of a focus on the importance of science in research making an impact, but that has sort of changed recently. And I hope that both males and females will be more motivated to go into science, because with the STEM, which is science, technology, engineering and mathematical sciences, there is a lot more opportunity for moving forward for new fields that are coming up that are science related. So previously, most of my work was in tuberculosis related research. I did my PhD in TB research and worked in TB immunology, trying to understand how the body responds to infection. And it so happened that when the COVID pandemic started, it was important to ask those questions about SARS COV. And so SARS COV-2 was something that we started to test for in the diagnostic lab at the AKUH, because in molecular pathology, I set up the first PCR test as early as February in 2020. And we scaled up testing in Karachi and worked with the government to scale up the response for testing for SARS COV-2. And with that, we had the opportunity to ask questions that previously we were asking because our laboratory was set up to do immunology research to try and understand responses to infection. So we'd been doing it to study bacterial infections, and we adapted that to looking at virus infections. Well, it's not easy, and I don't think anyone can have it all. It's all about what you spend time doing at any particular time. I've been incredibly fortunate because I've had a very supportive family. I grew up in an environment where science and medicine and research was normal. My grandfather was a scientist. He had a PhD in chemistry, and my father was very interested. He was a physician but did research and was very interested in science. I have many family members who have PhDs. So for me, I had a very supportive environment, and I think you really need that, and it's important to focus on your career for a long enough length of time to establish yourself before starting a family. So that's what worked for me, and it's different for different people. And then I've been incredibly fortunate to have a supportive husband and in-laws that have facilitated my career, and the children have been fantastic. They adapt.
Okay, great. So that's good to know.
Yeah, so in terms of family members, I have an aunt, my puppo, Dr Zahra Hasan, who has been incredible in terms of supporting me through my studies. She would fly out to attend conferences with me. When I was in England, she would visit me regularly. She would take me places in Europe, and she was incredibly supportive. And even now, she remains engaged in what I do and is a sounding board for new research ideas. And that having someone as part of your immediate family to be so incredibly supportive has helped a lot. And but more than anything, my husband now, who
I think that does play a very important role.
And with regard to mentorship, it's very, very important. So I've been very lucky that at the AKU I've had Professor Aga Hasan, who's a very senior immunologist who recruited me to AKU. And I worked with her, and she taught me not just about how to work in Pakistan, but how to get grants, how to get international funding, because that is very important, because working in science is incredibly competitive. At the end of the day, we are very resource poor, and whatever we have is limited by what's available right now. It's difficult to get supplies in time. So often we can plan projects and plan to do things, and by the time the supplies come in, somebody has already done that work or had that idea. So it's important to always have a plan that will allow you to do work that remains relevant to your local issues and still be able to generate novel data that has a global impact. I think persistence is very important. I've learned that you just have to carry on. Most women don't continue their careers regardless of any profession. They get degrees and then find that they enter the workforce and then it's all just too hard, or they think it's not worth the effort. So it's a choice, be it science or something else. It's just that in science, you need the commitment for much longer. You can't really take the breaks. So it's not like other jobs where you may take a break and feel you come back to it. You can't really in science. So if you haven't stayed in the field, then it's hard to get back to it. So for both men and then women do go into the sciences, especially biological sciences. In fact, most of our universities in Pakistan have predominantly women, but they tend not to stay on in it because of the difficulty in developing a career in science. You know, my father would say ki dati raho. And the other thing I remember him telling me is that tum faltu nahi ho. And I think that those are two things that just has to help keep you in perspective to keep going, because we are so busy and we spend a lot of time doing a lot of things, and sometimes you just need to decide what is important and what you can do, because you know, especially with children and a family, it's not possible to do everything, so one has to choose. So I think a routine helps, and now my morning routine is an exercise routine. So every morning I swim on most days, and before I go to work, and that gives me some time to think. And then I work through the day. I don't take breaks usually. Well, you know, since we're talking about women in science, the one change I think that would incredibly help women in science in their careers if there was less expectation of them to do domestic work. Because mostly women are, you know, have a double job. They've got a job at work and then they go home and then they've got another job. And of course they have families, but I think for them to succeed and for them to actually function as equals, there needs to be some division of chores. So menial tasks, yes, so menial tasks which can be done by other family members should not be left to the woman. I think it's very important to know and read about what people are doing both locally and internationally, and to use opportunities or any opportunity for travel and for international conferences. And I think that in the past year and a half, there have been an incredible increase in the opportunity for learning online. So a lot of international conferences that were not within reach of people until they could travel have all come online, which allows then a lot of knowledge sharing to be accessible to people who wouldn't otherwise have had the opportunity. So it's important to be engaged as to what is happening in your particular field at a global level, to get a sense of perspective, and then of course when they can, try and get training visits to see how people work in other environments. It's very important to know how people work elsewhere, because we can be very tunnel visioned about how things are done locally, and that's where international exposure helps, especially where in science, research infrastructures and the critical mass of people doing scientific research is bigger. There's an enormous opportunity to learn in a very small amount of time.